bound to its thick, unforgiving trunk by coarse hemp ropes that dug viciously into her torso and pressed a sinister, looming thread against her neck, a young woman hung suspended, her bare feet, pale and muddy, barely brushing the sodden earth. Her long light hair was plastered to her skin like a second, sadder skin. Her simple white blouse and plaid skirt, the uniform of a diligent student, soaked through and stained with the park's dark mud. Her eyes, a startling blue, usually filled with the quiet wonder of studying fern patterns, were now wide with a fear so profound it had passed into an eerie shock-induced calm, staring into the middle distance as if already viewing memories of her own life. This was Lara Vance. And this was the moment the world broke and then began to mend. The air itself seemed to weep, smelling of wet earth, decaying leaves, and the sharp metallic hint of impending winter. The only sounds were the drumming symphony of the rain on a million leaves, the distant indifferent groan of city traffic, and the ragged, shallow breaths of the young woman tied to the tree. Then, a sound that didn't belong, laughter. It was sharp, confident, and cruel, cutting through the gloom like a razor. Two figures stood under a large black golf umbrella, their postures relaxed, their hands in the pockets of expensive jeans. They wore matching blue and yellow varsity jackets, a bold stylized M embroidered over their hearts in golden thread that caught the scant light. Chase Thornton, tall with the careless good looks of a young god and a cruel smirk permanently etched on his lips, pointed directly at Lara as if she were a bizarre art exhibit in a gallery he owned. Look at her, like some kind of tragic wet ghost from a storybook. Pathetic. Braden Thornton, his brother, barrel-chested and built like a fortress, chuckled low in his throat, a sound of pure disdain. She wanted to be one with nature, to save it. Now she is part of the scenery. Poetic, really. Their confidence was absolute, a fortress built on generations of wealth and unquestioned authority, born of a lifetime where consequences were for other people, where apologies were written as checks, and where pain was something they administered, not received. Lara's lips, chapped and cold, moved almost imperceptibly, forming silent words. A prayer to a father gone too soon. Miller went straight for Lara, his eyes assessing the ropes, the noose, her pallor. "Oh, sweetheart," he breathed, a wave of paternal fury rising in him. He pulled his tactical knife, sawing at the ropes around her torso with controlled urgency. Gomez moved with deliberate speed toward Chase and Braden, his hand resting on his holster. "You two, on the ground now. Hands where I can see them." Chase puffed out his chest. "Officer, this is a huge misunderstanding. We were just on the ground." Gomez's voice was a whip crack, brooking no argument. The sound of more sirens converging from all directions filled the air, a symphony of impending reckoning. As the last rope around her torso gave way, Lara slumped forward, dead weight. Officer Miller caught her, easing her down onto the wet grass, his own jacket coming off to wrap around her shivering shoulders. Her eyes fluttered open, meeting his. They weren't the eyes of a victim anymore. They were the eyes of a witness. And in their depths, a quiet, unyielding fire was already beginning to rekindle. The incident was over. But the story, the long, arduous road to justice, was just beginning. To understand the profound, calculated cruelty of that moment under the oak, you must understand the two worlds that existed in the same zip code, yet light years apart. Lara and Maya Vance lived in a small, impeccably tidy third-floor apartment in the Linden complex, a building that always smelled faintly of lavender sachets and whatever affordable cut of meat was simmering in the slow cooker. Their mother, Sarah, worked the night shift as a hospital janitor, mopping floors in the silent, fluorescent-lit halls where life and death played out, and the day shift as a grocery store cashier, her hands permanently rough from cleaning chemicals and scanning groceries, her smile permanently tired but genuine. Their father, Joseph, a kind-hearted construction worker with a laugh that could shake the windows, had died from a sudden, massive car arrest when Lara was 14. He left behind a void filled by relentless work, quiet grief, and a fierce, protective love between the three women he adored. Lara, now 19, had become the family's fragile, bright hope. A brilliant full-ride scholarship student at the prestigious Middleton University, she studied environmental science. Her heart belonged not to boardrooms, but to wild spaces, to the intricate symbiosis of a lichen, the quiet journey of a creek, the towering dignity of old trees. The city park, with its hidden meadows and ancient oak, had been her sanctuary since childhood, the place where she felt closest to her father, who had taught her the names of every local bird. Maya, at 16, was all fire and fierce love, pragmatic where Lara was poetic. She was a whiz at math and saw the world in clear binary, right and wrong, protect and attack. She saw her sister as her hero, her second parent, the one who read her Tolkien, helped her navigate the treacherous. The word was a pebble, but in the silent clearing, it sounded like a gunshot. Braden snorted a laugh, but it was strained, nervous. No one ever told them no. Chase's face darkened, the pleasant mask slipping to reveal something uglier beneath. Big mistake, he hissed. He snatched the field notebook from her hands, a year of observations, sketches, data, and with a casual, contemptuous flick of his wrist, flung it in a high arc toward the murky pond. It landed with a soft, final plop and sank slowly beneath the greenish surface. They left then, their laughter echoing back to her. But the line had been crossed. The war declared. The systems yawn. Lara reported the incident the next day. The campus security officer, a man named Dobbs who used to work security for Thornton Properties, listened with a distracted air, took a vague statement on a sticky note, and assured her he'd look into it. The note found its way to the circular file. At the local police precinct, Sergeant Dobbs, no relation, but a similar attitude, listened, chewing on a toothpick, as she described the threat, the destruction of property. He sighed when she mentioned the Thornton name. "Look, miss, sounds like a couple of high-spirited kids horsing around a little too rough. You sure you're not embellishing? Those Thornton boys, their dad's a pillar of this community. Good family. I'll have a word, but let's not make a federal case out of a little playground drama, huh?" The system's first lazy yawn in the face of injustice was a deafening, soul-crushing sound to Lara. It was the setup, the clear, unequivocal message that she was alone, that her truth was negotiable, and that her pain was an acceptable cost of doing business in Middleton. Yet in that profound isolation, her defiance solidified into something harder, sharper. She bought a small, discreet voice recorder. She started taking screenshots of every vaguely threatening post on her social media feeds. She saved every anonymous, crudely typed note. Left in her campus mailbox, "Know your place, scholarship trash." She was building a case, brick by evidentiary brick, not yet knowing how high the walls would need to be or how desperately she would soon need the shelter they could provide. The partial victory, when it came, was so sweet it felt like a physical taste on her tongue, a brief, glorious sunrise after a long night. The local independent newspaper, the Middleton Clarion, had a young, dogged investigative journalist named Anika Sharma. Intrigued by the stark contrast between Lara's meticulous, passionate defense of the park and Thornton Corporation's slick, impersonal proposals, she began digging. She interviewed Lara not as a hysterical victim but as an expert. She pored over the environmental impact report Thornton had submitted, finding glaring omissions and consultants on the Thornton payroll. Her article, titled "The Tree and the Tower, A Clash for Middleton's Soul," was published on a Sunday morning. One morning, Lara found her car in the university lot with a tire slashed so cleanly it looked professional. The campus cafe where she worked part-time, the Brood Bean, suddenly had its supply of pastries and coffee beans disrupted by issues with its primary vendor, a vendor owned by a Thornton subsidiary. Her manager, a kind woman named Brenda, called her into the back office with tears in her eyes. "Honey, I have to cut your hours. I'm so sorry. The suppliers, they're making it impossible." Then came the digital onslaught. Fake social media profiles laden with misogynistic insults and doctored, compromising photos proliferated overnight. A whisper campaign painted her as an unstable radical, a liar seeking fame. The university's dean of students, a man who played golf with Arthur Thornton, called her into his spacious office. "Lara, these distractions seem to be following you," he said, steepling his fingers. "Perhaps, for your own well-being and the university's reputation, a leave of absence would be prudent. To let things settle." The system was flexing its interconnected muscles, showing her the true, suffocating cost of her defiance. It wasn't just about a park anymore. It was about erasing her from the narrative entire. The rising tension reached its peak one frigid Tuesday night as she walked home from her now major shift at the library. The streets were quiet, the pools of light from the street lamps feeling more like traps than beacons. A sleek, silent black SUV, a Cadillac Escalade, pulled up beside her, its tinted window sliding down with a soft hum. Chase's face, illuminated by the dashboard glow, was devoid of its usual smirk. It was serious. Cold. "Last chance, tree hugger. This is your final courtesy call. Move on. Drop out. Disappear. Or we'll move you. And it won't be to a nicer neighborhood." Before the furious retort could form on her lips, Braden, from the passenger seat, leaned over and threw a large cup of icy, syrupy soda directly into her face. The shock of the cold, the sticky humiliation, the sheer childish brutality of it rooted her to the spot. The SUV accelerated away, its tires squealing, their laughter now sounding forced, frantic even. Lara stood on the desolate sidewalk, soda dripping from her hair, her nose, her chin, soaking into her scarf. She trembled, not from the cold, but from a boiling, volcanic rage that finally, fully erupted. She wiped her face with a shaking hand, her fingers sticky. This was not horsing around. This was a campaign of terror. She took out her phone, her movements jerky with anger, and called Maya. "Meet me at the park tomorrow after school. By the Oak. I'm meeting Anika, the journalist, and Councilwoman Rodriguez. We're going public with everything, the threats, the sabotage, all of it. It's time to fight back with the only thing they can't buy, the truth." The rain began as a soft, mournful drizzle mid-afternoon, a fitting pathetic fallacy for the clandestine meeting Lara. That scream found ears attuned to distress. Henry Abernathy's phone camera, now steady in his hands, captured it all, the terrified sister charging, the shove into the mud, the sneering faces of the boys, the bound form of Lara, the urgent, heroic sprint of officers Gomez and Miller. Margaret's voice on the 911 call was a masterpiece of concise horror. "There is a young woman tied to the big oak tree in Middleton Park. She has a rope around her neck. There are young men assaulting her younger sister. Please send everyone. They are going to kill her."